Welcome to TAP. So happy that you are with us today. I have a wonderful guest that I'm really curious to interview. She is, let's say you're here, but I'm introducing you. So let's say she is an astrologer for many years and a creativity specialist and a writer and the author of the book, The Power of Mercury. Welcome, Leslie McGuirk.
Thank you. I'm so happy to talk to you today.
Good. Now I'll change to you.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm really excited because I found you in this curious way. Well, because I'm looking for people who are combining therapy and astrology, and you had participated on someone's video around therapy and where you were introducing the astrology in connection with that. But then I also see you have many other things going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, but let me first hear about that, the way that you view therapy and astrology together or in some kind of cooperation.
Okay. So basically, I've been studying astrology since I was 19 because I had an astrologer that my mother sent me to when I was 19 who actually changed and saved my life. And she saw me in ways that nobody else had seen me. And I knew intuitively that everything she was telling me was correct. She said, "You're incredibly creative. You should be doing this, this, and this." And I wasn't doing any of the things that she saw were for my highest good. So I started to study astrology at that point, but never in a million years did I ever think I would become an astrologer. That was not ever something I had aspirations to being. I was an author and illustrator. I started off, this astrologer had said I was really creative. She did tell me that I was good at astrology too, but at that time, she said, "You're insanely creative. You've got to get busy." I had never taken art classes. I had not been told that I had any talent, but in my heart, I knew she was right. So I started studying fiction writing in college and thought I was going to be a children's book author and illustrator. That took 13 years before my first book was published. And eventually I've had over 20 books published and have sold over 2 million copies. So written and illustrated them. And nobody told me that this was something that was ever going to happen for me. But the astrologer was right. She said that I would first become well known for my creativity overseas. And I became famous in Japan. And I don't know if you know much about astrocartography maps, but I have a Jupiter midheaven line going right through Tokyo. Isn't that incredible?
That is incredible. Yeah.
I know. So I go from literally, I started a t-shirt design company, got discovered by Takashimaya, a Japanese department store, and all of my artwork and designs. I was doing all animal and environmental designs. Remember, I really didn't study art professionally or go to art school. And then all of a sudden I'm in Japan. I'm thinking that this astrologer was so right. I've been discovered by the Japanese department store. And now I'm flying to Tokyo and being treated like a celebrity over there as a pretty famous designer for about 10 years. Eventually, my children's books got published in Japanese and then in the UK, and then eventually in the United States. So through this whole time, astrology is just in the back of my head, constantly studying only because I wanted to learn about myself.
Yeah.
That was it. And I did go into therapy around age 19, around that same time when the astrologer tried to help me. And so I did 20 years of psychotherapy. And the way I look at it is that therapy is like taking your car into a shop and sitting down with a person really knowledgeable about cars and talking about the car. So you learn all about the car, you learn about where it was made, you find out how you're designed, but you never get to actually drive it and you never actually get to fix it. So it was not until I was 50 years old that someone told me about EMDR therapy. And that is what I think really, really works, because that's like going to a mechanic who can lift under the hood and actually adjust your car. Because otherwise, I believe most of us have PTSD. And a lot of us have undiagnosed childhood PTSD. So an EMDR therapist is like going into the shop, and instead of talking about your car, you actually physically shift the way that your brain is working. A lot of people probably don't know what EMDR is. I assume you definitely know what it is, right?
Yeah, it's the eye movement therapy.
Therapy, yes. Have
Mm.
you ever tried it?
It's actually part of the education that I'm taking, so I'm waiting for it. It's coming up for me.
That's exciting. Well, I mean, maybe it doesn't work for everyone, but I would say I send about 80% of my clients who have trauma to EMDR therapists. Now, you have to make sure you get a good therapist because, like anything, it all depends on who you're talking to. But I totally refer people to therapists a lot. I prefer them to go to therapists who do regular therapy and also EMDR. But therapy is useful, and I'm not saying that it's not good, but if you really want to change your life and make things easier for you, it's the EMDR therapy that will get you where you want to go much faster.
Okay, I have some questions for all of that. So first,
Okay, good.
first of all those, did you say 20 years in psychotherapy?
Yes.
What kinds? And because if it didn't work at all, you would have stopped, right? It,
Right. No, as I say, it was interesting. I learned a lot about myself. Yeah. So it's just regular therapy. It wasn't
like,
Jungian, or it
okay,
was nothing,
we-
you know,
yeah.
other than just straight therapy.
Mm, okay. And and then you saw different therapists, or
I saw a total of two different ones in that 20-year period.
okay, okay, yeah, that's not a lot. But then you got to go really deep with those.
Yes, but here's the problem with that. I went deep and I understood,
Uh-huh.
but I couldn't shift my
Oh,
life. I couldn't change the way that I felt.
okay.
So I look at us as like cars, and we have an owner's manual, which is your astrology chart. And I believe we physically, you had mentioned this earlier when you had written to me, I actually believe you're supposed to outgrow your chart. You're supposed to get it to the point where you don't get stuck in your squares, your oppositions, or whatever's lacking in your chart. You figure out a way to, like I say, take scissors, cut some of these lines, elevate yourself above it so that you are operating at a frequency where you're not getting pulled down all the time by the things that are in your chart. Because it's very easy to say, oh, well, I have a chart for depression or alcoholism, so I can't help it. So, well, you can help it. Once you know you've got that, you have to really work hard at making sure you don't go down that path.
I so agree with that and love that. Yes, because it's definitely for me therapy is the promise that there is something to be done about it. And I was just curious about all of those years in psychotherapy, but I hear then you found EMDR, which is, can we call it a type of trauma therapy?
Yes, but I think, like I said, I think everyone has trauma. So if you live in the world right now, if you're part of society, you probably have trauma because it's very stressful
Yeah.
right now for everyone. So it is for trauma, but I think we're all traumatized. And I think that it's the fastest way to start feeling better. And
Mm.
before EMDR, I was always looping. The same patterns would happen over and over again. And I kept thinking, okay, the only thing in common with this is me. If this pattern keeps happening, it's something I'm doing. And had done so much reading of metaphysical books and taking courses all over the place with some of the best metaphysical teachers that were around at the time, and trying to figure out, how do I find my way through this life with more peace and grace. And what I finally realized after doing the EMDR is that I could have tried for a gazillion years to shift, and I was not going to be able to do it, because it's literally just like in the chart. There are physical things that you have been given in your chart that, especially if they're emotional, if you don't, it's like, let me give you another example. It's like a computer that has a virus. All right. I was born with a bunch of different viruses in my astrology chart. If you go to a therapist, you sit and you talk about the virus and you analyze the virus, but you don't get the frickin' virus out of the computer. So the EMDR therapist goes in, grabs those memories, it interrupts the pattern of where you've been looping, mostly in the squares and the oppositions in your chart. And it goes in and it cuts them so that you still see them, you still feel them, you still have them, but you're not looping. Because we tend to loop in the difficult parts of our chart.
Oh man.
That makes sense?
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it even more.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. And what's really upsetting to me is that a lot of people don't know about it. That's very, very disturbing to me. And the reason probably why is because a lot of therapists would go out of business if there actually was a method that would get their patients out really quickly.
See, that's why I like the school that I'm in, because they say, the best thing would be for us to not have a job. It is the best thing. And I think that's part of, it's not just this particular school, it's part of a newer wave that's all about you doing the job, like the individual being able to work on themselves when needed. And of course, very effective ways of healing. So
Right.
it's not a continuous thing, like you say, looping, but when something comes up, that then you're personally equipped to handle it. Right.
Yes. And remember, our brains are physical things like a computer, and we can get stuck. Okay. It's when you get stuck, what happens a lot of times is that your parents or your friends or your partner will say, well, why don't you just get over it? Why don't you just stop? And you should be able to stop, because intellectually you've talked with your therapist and you know that this isn't helping you, but you literally can't. And it's because your brain is still caught in a virus that has to be broken. And I just think it's incredibly profound. And I'm so glad that you asked me to talk with you, because the more people who know about this, the better.
And so where is the link to astrology? Now you found EMDR therapy. Is that then replacing astrology? Like, how is it working
No,
together?
actually, the two together are what I think are pure magic. So the fact that you're a therapeutic astrologer is just so perfect. That's a great name, by the way, for what you're doing. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's exactly right. So I think astrology and mental health are the two. They belong together, because I could tell you many, many stories of clients that have had health issues that no doctor can understand. And one person in particular had 6 years of going to all these different doctors, spending so much money trying to figure out why she was so sick. And I was working at the time with the head of integrative medicine at NYU, who was doing a little experiment with me to see if he could give me some of his really difficult patients and see if I could he couldn't figure out how to help them. So this one woman, 6 years of absolutely not getting any answers. And in 1 hour, I knew exactly what the root cause was of all of the physical ailments that she had. And I told her, I said, first of all, you need to do EMDR therapy, because that you have unresolved trauma from when you were a teenager that no one's ever helped you with. And no matter what you do with pills and physical therapy and all this stuff, you have to get to the root cause. It's like cutting down a tree, but you don't ever dig up the roots. So the tree keeps growing. So with astrology, you can find the root cause. And then with the EMDR, you pull out the root. And then you don't continually loop. So she had something called tension myositis syndrome. Have you ever heard of that? Do you know the work of Dr. John Sarno, Sarno?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, this is huge. You want to start looking into this guy, because he was brilliant. So one thing I have to back up. One of the things the astrologer told me when I was 19, she said, Leslie, you look healthy, you're athletic, and no one would think you're not healthy. But I've had a lifetime of not being the healthiest person. So I have a tremendous amount of knowledge around people, clients who have things that doctors can't figure out, because that was me. So this tension myositis syndrome, it's similar to the thing that happens when people get their legs amputated. They still can feel their feet, or they still have phantom leg pain. And it's very real, but it's happening. It's a physical thing that's happening in the brain. So I told her, we have to do research for you to understand what tension myositis syndrome is. And then after you do that, then we need to do the EMDR around what's the root cause of all this physical ailments. It's all trauma induced, because the body holds the memories. And if there's a lot of pain, it will go hide someplace. And what the body does is then it starts moving the pain around the body to different places. So it becomes sort of elusive. So then all of a sudden you've got all these weird things that no doctor can figure out. That's part of what the tension myositis syndrome is. I actually have it as well. Yeah, and it's actually a physical thing that happens in the brain. It doesn't happen to everyone. Tends to happen more with people who are super sensitive and who are self-employed, or weirdly enough, I think he said people who have acne tend to have this. I had acne when I was younger. So here's an example of how incredibly weird tension myositis syndrome is. So the person who told me about it is a pretty well-known guy, a well-known writer, who he said, listen, Leslie, you can get rid of this pain just by reading the book. Once you're on to what your brain is doing to your body, you can actually stop the pattern. So I'm reading the book, and I lived at the time near the ocean, and I went down to the beach, and I jumped over a wave that was like this big. And I blew out both of my Achilles tendons. And I had to crawl home. I couldn't walk. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, he warned me that if you read the book, you could get activated. And I thought, okay, this is that tension myositis syndrome. I looked at my ankles. They were both blown out and swollen. I had already sprained both my ankles several times before. So it was a weak part in my body. But there is no, I mean, zero physical reason for me to develop such acute Achilles tendonitis from jumping over a wave that big. I mean, and I kept telling myself, this is phantom leg pain. This is not real, but it feels real. And a lot of people go have surgery because they don't understand what this syndrome is. I mean, it is wild. So after about 24 hours, it went away, because I kept telling myself, this isn't real, even though I looked at my ankles and saw that they were all swollen. So that's trippy, but it is a recognized medical condition. Isn't that crazy?
I do need to look into that.
Because especially if you're a sensitive person, and it's this syndrome, they actually do conferences around it, because if you have tension myositis syndrome, it's really painful, because you're going to have excruciating pain in different parts of your body, and no doctor's going to be able to figure it out. And then you might have surgery because the doctor doesn't know what else to do, but it's not going to do anything. It's not a good idea to do surgery, because like for my ankles, I knew what was going on, because and I could give you other examples like that. So where
the point is that then what you say is can you heal yourself, or by convincing yourself that it's not real?
Well, you have to realize what's going on. Once you realize what's going on, you can relax and realize, okay, this is started from trauma. I traumatized my ankles before. When I'm under stress, my body will get weak in the places where I've already been injured. So the stress decided, because I was onto it, that decided to land in that part of my body. And as soon as I kept telling myself, Leslie, this isn't real. This is all in your head. The pain was excruciating, but it was not from something physical that happened to me.
So did the pain go away then?
It can go. Oh, absolutely. It goes away. Like I said, some people get better just from reading the book, because you'll be reading the book and you're like, oh my God, this sounds like me. this is craziness. It's a weird thing, and it is a syndrome, but this Dr. John Sarno, he said, it is physical. It's not fake. The pain is not fake.
Okay, we better link to him in the show note.
Yeah, Dr. John Sarno. So another one I'll tell you about that's really interesting, having to do with the body. Do you know, because I do a lot of sports, do you know what getting the yips is? I don't know if you have that in Denmark. YIPS, the yips.
Not sure what that is, no.
Okay, so it can happen in golf or tennis, but all of a sudden, like a golfer will be going to hit the ball, and all of a sudden he can't. It happens to professionals, by the way. This is not, it's similar to tension myositis syndrome. All of a sudden, the golf pro can't hit the ball. There's a really famous video of Charles Barkley. He was doing a golf swing, and all of a sudden his arm goes back and it makes all these weird movements. And people think that, well, what's your problem? You know how to play golf. Why can't it? It's exactly the same as getting the hiccups, but it's a mental hiccup. So when you get the hiccups, how do you stop them?
Hold your breath.
Yeah, but it doesn't sometimes work. But do you get mad at yourself for getting the hiccups?
No, that doesn't work. I mean,
No, but what I'm saying is that it's an involuntary muscle movement thing that's actually connected to Parkinson's disease. And it's not Parkinson's, but it's what I'm trying to get at with all of this stuff is that our bodies, a lot of times when we have things that are not easily diagnosed, there could be so many things going on that are not going to be logical to your regular Western trained doctor.
Yeah.
So what I do with astrology is that's my area of expertise, is helping people with health issues that no one seems to be able to figure out.
Oh my God. Because I didn't realize that. I did see on your web page where it says yeah, pioneering in medicine or something, right?
I work with so many doctors. I didn't go looking for this either. I just started to, in the beginning, I would just send people to EMDR therapists. So there's one therapist in Florida, he will tell you his entire practice was filled with my astrology clients. He knew nothing about astrology. All he knew is that I could see the problem. I'm the diagnostic person looking at your car, and he's the mechanic. We work together. So I've worked with, let me see, I don't know how many, maybe 10 therapists, different therapists, and then Western trained doctors. I've worked with Dr. Pat Hopkins out of Tufts University in Boston, and as I said, the head of integrative medicine at NYU. I've worked with a bunch of Western trained doctors. I've worked with a bunch of neurologists. At one point, I had 8 neurologists in my astrology Wisdom Academy school, because they saw that what I was doing with people, like, I think it's the neurological part of all this is huge.
I'm so happy to hear that astrology is recognized, because that tends to be the problem, that people will say, well, that's some alternative view. But I guess these diseases that we have these days, that with diffuse symptoms, like we're not sure what's going on in the body, they call out for something different, right? And so you've taken like a deep dive into medical astrology.
Yeah, that's and not intentionally. I just realized that I had this weird knack. So I'll tell you another story. That's a great one. I was on Coast to Coast Radio with George Norrie. I don't know if you know that program, but I was telling him about some of the work I've done with helping people. And he was interested in the whole connection between astrology and medicine. And one thing I told him is that Hippocrates, who's the father of modern medicine, do you know that he put in the Hippocratic Oath that any man who practices medicine and doesn't know how to read a chart is not a doctor, but a fool? Did you know that?
Yes, I knew that. My astrology teacher told me that.
Yeah, so astrology and medicine used to be connected. Then what happened is astrology then became more about horoscopes and predicting the future. And that's not what I do. I actually don't believe you can. I believe you can look at the vehicle you're driving, your car, that's you, and see what kind of weather pattern is coming up. But you have free will. You can decide to stay home and not go into the, the rainstorm. But anyway, so I'm on George Norrie's show, and afterwards, this woman wrote to me, and she said her daughter had horrible migraines that nobody could figure out. And she wanted her to have a reading with me, but she said, my daughter doesn't want to do it. She says, that's ridiculous. No, I've been to 5 neurologists. I've done everything. I'm done. She was practically suicidal from the pain. She was a mess. So the mother ended up paying for her session with me. And when the daughter got on the phone, she could tell she was just like so disgusted, like, whatever, like, you're going to help me. You're an astrologer. At the top neurologist in the country can't help me. And you think she was kind of like had that attitude. So I looked at her chart and I said, I know exactly why you have these migraines. And here's what you're going to do. One of them was EMDR. There were other things. Like, I have all these tools in my toolbox to help people. This woman, I'll send you her email. They've gone away. She did the entire protocol that I told her to do. And she's a brand new human being because of it. And how can we not use astrology with medicine when I have example after example of how much it can help, especially in the realm of trauma-induced pain or anything to do with mental health things like depression. Mental health is a big thing. I mean, I think astrology should be used at every single drug and alcohol rehabilitation center that's out there.
Me too. Oh man, this is so good. It's because I read your book, the Power of Mercury, so that's why I wasn't expecting this, except that you do have an analogy about cars in that book.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I look at everybody as I mean, when I do a reading for somebody, I don't talk about astrology. I use only metaphors. So it's not boring for my clients. And I have them look at the chart with me. I don't do it. I don't like looking at my clients because I don't want them to feed me information.
Yeah.
So I like to look at their chart and tell them what kind of clothes they're wearing and what they look like. And then the more they know that I'm right about things, when I tell them things that are positive that they need to focus on, they'll be more likely to believe me.
Okay, I get it. Okay, yeah. So
when you do a reading for someone, do you do it over Zoom?
if are you asking me?
Yes.
Depends. I do both in person and over Zoom. Yeah.
But you never do it just on the phone where you don't see a person.
Yeah, I give that as an option, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, people have reasons for not wanting to be seen, so that's definitely an option. Yeah. Do you have great experience with that?
Yeah, like I said, I don't like doing it. I like to not see
Well,
anything.
that's what you said. Okay, sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't get that. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because then I can go deeper.
Okay, I see. So building trust like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And also because I'm an artist, I'm a very visual person. I don't want your body language to be, because your body language tells you a lot about whether or not someone's confident or whatever. All I have is a voice and a chart.
Right.
That's it.
That's beautiful. Yeah, the voice. Yeah, it's the vibration of the soul.
Yeah.
And the chat, that's also the vibration of the soul or the blueprint, or however you want to say it. Great. Yeah.
Right. So I also look at astrology as if we're all born with a piece of music, and that's all it is. It's like music is invisible. Astrology is invisible. I mean, you can read it on a piece of paper, but it's something that's felt. It's something that's experienced. And a good astrologer is going to let that person learn to love the kind of music they were born with. And we don't get a choice. I sent you my birth info. Sorry, I was a little late, but I have a gnarly chart. It's not the easiest chart in the world, but it's interesting.
Yes. I mean, you have your, can I say?
Sure.
Okay. So you have your south node in the 8th house and it's in Pisces. And I have my sun in the 8th house in Pisces.
At the same degree?
No, 12 degrees. You have yours in 16 degrees, right? So, but
That's pretty close.
it's pretty close. It's just that that's what I feel is therapeutic astrology. I mean, I think probably my Sagittarius is the astrology more, but the therapeutic part, the need to go deep, that's that. eighth house. And I think in Pisces, you have to combine a whole bunch of modalities.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with that.
And healing, of course. Okay, but Leslie, I have many things I want to ask you about. Um, okay, so because now we're in this topic of medicine, I feel that's really important. But then I'm also holding some questions that I just have for your book and some things you write in there. So maybe let's take a little detour into a question that I had before, and then let's see, because I'm also curious to know more about, like, where do you see those diseases, those more maybe more modern days diseases in a chart. But let's first let me ask you about, because you've had many changes through your life, and I think that you write in this book is about the flow of life, and just like I've heard that before from many astrologers, that you didn't really want to do it, and then things just happened, right? Clients came and it became what you did.
Right.
So yeah, can you tell me about your philosophy around that? Like how is it supposed to feel with this flow of life? I mean, because it can also be hard to, oh, I'm gonna start up as an astrologer, my own business. And the way that you describe it is more like it just happened.
All right. Well, this is a really big life lesson for me. And it's a life lesson that has come up at least 4 times, and I've had to learn it at least 4 times in a painful way. So I'm going to give you an example. Again, like I always talk in metaphors. So I was 40 years old, and I was teaching a class at Rancho La Puerta in Mexico on creative thinking. This is long before I was doing astrology as a profession. But the point of this story is that it's the same lesson. So anyway, I'm teaching, and I had a nice following of people who love my class. And this guy who was there was watching me, and he said, I want to be your business manager. You're really good. You could make a lot of money, but you're doing it all wrong because you're doing these classes, but you're not collecting people's emails. You don't have a mailing list. You're not doing any marketing. And my logical mind was thinking, oh my God, he's right. I'm not even thinking about that stuff. So he was going to pay me this salary, which was more money than I'd ever made in my life. And he was going to basically be my manager and agent and take me on the road and help me build my business. So we started working together, and I went back the next time I went to teach, and I followed all of his ideas. And guess what happened? The class was a total failure.
Mhm.
It was the only time ever that I taught the exact same materials, but
Yeah.
you know what changed? My intention. Because guess what? Now I wanted something from them. I wanted their emails. I wanted to market to them. I wanted to make money. I wanted to do all these things that this guy told me I needed to do. And I realized, oh my God, when you're doing this kind of spiritual work, if you do it out of the love of people and the love of the work, then the flow will happen. But when you try to make them want to be a part of something, and it feels like you're yearning or coming from your head, I need to do what's right for business, blah, 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 blah. I need to post at least 10 times a day on social media. I need to do blah, blah, blah. The minute I do any of that, it fails. It doesn't mean I can't do social media. I do, but it has to be because I want to, not because I think I have to.
Okay. I really like that explanation. I really like that explanation.
But it's scary because guess what? That guy was not wrong. Technically, he's 100% right. Technically. Okay. But I'm not a technical person. I am a spiritual person who's creative, who comes from everything in life from this place of wonder and enchantment. And how the hell did I go from selling t-shirts out of the back of my car in New England to being famous in Japan? I didn't go looking for that. I couldn't have gone looking for that. It wouldn't have even crossed my mind. It wouldn't have crossed my mind that I would be a full-time astrologer. That was not on the radar screen. And I remember exactly where I was in my house in Florida when I realized maybe I should try being an astrologer. And I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to have a website. I don't want to have a business card, but if I can help people, okay. And I looked at my chart and I said, I can see I've got Pluto in the first house. I can really help people, heal people, help people. That's what I'm here to do. I thought I was doing that with my art, but obviously the universe was going to chew me up and spit me out until I got the bigger picture, which was I had to help at a deeper level. So I remember I just put my arms up in the air and I said, all right, I'll do it. But you, who's ever in charge out there, you have to bring the people to me. I am not going to have a website and a business card. Eventually I did, but in the beginning I didn't.
But I really resonate with that. And it might be the Pisces that just wants it to be natural and flowy and not forced. So I do resonate with that.
But it's hard because you have to make a living. And then you're like, wait a minute. I know there's a formula that you have to follow to get clients. And if I do that, but in the kind of work we're doing, got to be really, really careful. Not many people understand this conversation we're having, by the way. For most people, they would probably say that I've had several people tell me that I'm crazy, that I could be making millions of dollars if I just took all this knowledge I've got and market it in a way that was more for the mass market world. And I just can't do it.
Mm. Yeah, how do you feel about that? Like,
Sometimes it's hard. I wish that sometimes that I could be like other people and not have to no, I feel like I have to come from this place of trust and being of service. I mean, seriously, I understand that that's just for me. This is the way I know my life works better. When I say wake up every day and say, let me be of service, then things work out. If I wake up every day and say, oh my God, I don't have any clients for next month. What am I going to do? Oh my God, I better start doing some social media, blah, blah, all that. Oh my God, that makes so much anxiety. It's a very different way to wake up than to say, I know I can help people, bring it on. And that doesn't mean you just stay in your house and do nothing. But I tell a friend of mine who's an astrologer who didn't have a lot of clients recently. And I said, well, just give it away. I said, why don't you just go to the Humane Society and start doing some of the astrology charts for the dogs there and have somebody write a story about you. I said, do something different. Just start giving it away and then see what happens. Thinking in creative, unusual ways to get your story out there and what makes you different.
I mean, you are a specialist in creativity, so we have to listen to you. Wow, that's okay. Yeah, that's the advice that I like because up until this point, I think many people is like, yeah, it should be with the right intention and the right vibration. But then when you say something like that, we feel the radicality of this. It's pretty radical to say that. Just give it away for free.
Give it away for free. My God, why not? A lot of the things I did in the beginning, I would just go to a friend's house. I said, get 15 of your friends together and I'm going to do a free 1 hour talk about what I do. And all of a sudden I had 15 clients.
Yeah. Okay. So
Or just even think about where do people need you the most right now? I would say the teenage kids are really troubled right now. Do you know how many people are suicidal who are young? I mean, I mean, that's just an idea I've had for a while to go and start saying, look, let's do an experiment with this school. I want to try working with, 5 of your teens and find somebody who's open to letting you do, trying it out and see what happens. And then all of a sudden, if it works, guess what? And it will work. That's the great thing. It will work.
is it a general advice that you're giving people this, or do you look
No,
at
it's just because it's you. It's
it's
just you. No, because I'm like I haven't looked at your chart, but I could tell from the questions you were asking me that you were wondering, how do you navigate astrology healing with business? I mean, that's basically what you're asking me. How do you make a living doing this? And it's
describe it, it seems so easy to you. And I like the idea of that. I've just not had that experience. yet. But
Well, because you're probably still caught in the marketing mind.
yeah, but
Think about it with cooking. Let's say you're making dinner for somebody. When you're really in the flow with the cooking, you've got music on and you're having fun. You're putting all your love and your energy into it. Very different than if you're cooking and following a tight recipe and really nervous. Is this going to taste good? It's like, it's just, or playing music
absolutely.
tight. Or are you enjoying it? Are you having it? Check with your body and see, am I enjoying this? Is this fun? Do I feel like have a purpose? If you do, you're on the right track.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're absolutely right. And I think for me at least, I don't know if it's a general thing, but for me at least, it also has to do with what we were just talking about in terms of trauma and having tension around, well, I guess worth. It comes down to that, and then that can be feel very rigid.
Okay, that's a really important thing we need to talk about, because in the beginning, I don't know how long you've been an astrologer. How long have you been doing this?
In 17,
17 years?
no, since 2017.
17. I was going to say you're not old enough to be doing it 17 years. Okay, so since 2017. All right. So part of it is that when you're doing the reading, if you're worried about whether or not you're going to be making a difference, or if you're right, I mean, is that what it is? You sometimes don't know if you have the confidence, or is
I feel so passionate about this, and
okay, so that's not the problem. That's not the confidence, but you get nervous that it might not be
everything about it, like the service, the therapy, and the astrology, is just pure love for me. It's the business part.
okay. So it's a business part of it.
Like it's exactly what you were saying before. Like you have
Okay.
to do it in a certain way. I'm not really vibrating with that.
Right. Be very, very careful, because um, there are lots of people out there who are astrologers who are what I call technicians. Okay. And they can make a lot of money because they're technically great.
Mm,
Right. That's a very different thing than what I'm doing, or what it sounds like you're doing. I'm not a technician at all.
mm,
And I'm doing something that's purely, it's a gift that I've got. If you've got a gift, you just get your ego, get your head out of the way, and just say, look, this chart's talking to me. The chart, I always tell my students, the chart never lies, but my clients do all the time.
I
So you
like.
have to be very careful with that too, because my students, what I have this thing called a mystery guest, where this is a great way to learn, for if you ever want to join, or anyone who's listening, it's the best way to learn, because I say, just like music, how do you learn to play the guitar? You pick up the freaking guitar and you play it. With astrology, you have to play it. So I play with real people that are mystery guests. We don't see their face, we don't see their name, but they're live. And it's my students and myself, could be as many as 20 people, where they watch me read the chart, or they help me read it. And they have seen many times, sometimes it takes 45 minutes for me to, and I say all the time, well, the chart's not lying. I just have to figure out another way to say this. But at the end, my students are always like in shock, like, I can't believe it. That person had a mother who was horrible, and she told us for 45 minutes she was great. And then we find out that I wasn't wrong. The chart, like I said, the chart never lies, but that takes a lot of practice to get to that level of confidence where you do not give up, that you trust the astrology so much that you don't let your head get in the way. You just say, I see it. I know that this happened to this person. And like, here's one example. Somebody had Pluto in the third house, and usually when that happens, it could be that they live next door to a cemetery, for all I know, but usually there's a death in their early childhood with that placement. There were other things down there too that let me know something traumatic happened to her in her childhood. And for 45 minutes, she kept saying, no, 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 nothing bad happened. I had a great childhood. And I'm like, you know what? Don't believe it. And finally, at the end, this is what she said to me. well, maybe this thing you're talking about, Leslie, is when my grandmother died. And I said, well, how old were you when your grandmother died? She said, I was 16. And that's all she said. And then thank God I asked this question. This is where the intuition comes in, not the technical part, the intuition. I then said, how did your grandmother die? And she said, oh, my grandfather came home from work, bludgeoned her to death, rolled her up in a carpet, and buried her under the house. I know.
Yeah, there's that detail.
Like, but she wasn't, what I'm trying to tell you is that this kind of stuff that gets buried, that is what you do to cope. It's a mechanism for this girl to have survived and not been totally messed up from it. But she still was, but she had made it as if it wasn't a big deal. And you can't go through life with that happening to you and not have issues. And what I believe is that if you don't take care of it, the next generation, she had 2 daughters. I said, you don't want your girls to be dealing with this kind of secret stuff.
Yeah, because she's been dealing with it. It's been passed
Yes.
on to her, this trauma.
Right. So what it's generational trauma, then it will go to the next generation. And I don't know if you've noticed this with charts, but if there's unresolved trauma, it will go from like mother to daughter to granddaughter. Like it will just keep the same pattern will keep showing up in every generation. So my job is to figure out where and kind of get to the root cause and get it to stop, bring it to the light so that it can be healed.
I am so excited for our common what we share this passion. It's so vivid in my mind as we speak, how you can see these traumas in the chat and how you can talk to clients about it and how you have to also be patient. I mean, at least that's what I do with session after session in therapy. Like it's a pretty huge illusion to have broken, something like that. It takes time usually for people to realize.
Right,
And
but with astrology, you can go zip, 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 right, nail it.
you s-
Then you take that to the therapist.
that's one thing, right? Yeah, yes. Then you go to the therapist.
Find that you because in the chart there's I mean, usually people who come to see me do not have the easiest charts. I mean, there's some people who don't need to see an astrologer. They're fine, all right? They're doing okay. But my goal is to find in the chart where there's a tension point or a hiccup, like we were talking about hiccups before, something that's out of your control because it's just happening and it's disturbing the flow of your life. Like a hiccup disturbs your life. It's disturbing, but you can't tell yourself stop hiccuping. Okay. So in the chart, there are things where you're like doing this constantly and it's the same thing. And whether it's you keep attracting the same kind of partner over and over again, and you keep getting abandoned, or you keep trying to lose weight, but you can't. Maybe there's a reason why you can't lose weight. We have to figure out why. Why is this happening over and over again?
Yeah, and that's the difference. I mean, and that's why it's a great combination, because then you can identify it, we can know the root cause, and then to change it, it takes some work. Some
Yeah,
inner
I mean, I give people homework all the time. I just say, look, I remember your car to me. I can't touch your car. I can't fix it. I can only diagnose and send you to various mechanics
yeah.
because the mechanical part is very, very important. We need to do the mechanical part too. Just knowing it, sometimes that's enough. Like with the tension myositis syndrome, sometimes just knowing it is enough. And same thing with astrology. Sometimes just knowing it, you're like, oh, no wonder. I mean, here's another example. This woman had a really unusual chart of trauma in her childhood. And she kept saying the same thing, like, no, everything was fine. I've got 2 sisters. My parents loved me. And she was so adamant about her perfect freaking childhood. And then guess what I found out at the end? Her 2 sisters were Siamese twins, conjoined at the head.
Okay.
And
What?
she thought that was like, because she was, when you're little, you don't know anything better. That was normal for her, but it was very stressful.
What's the signature in the chat then?
Excuse me?
What's the signature in the chat for
I
that?
don't, I don't remember in the chart, what it was. It was a while ago, but it was just another example of 45 minutes of me hammering on what the hell happened to you in your childhood. Nothing. I'm fine. I'm like, the chart is my guide. I trust the chart more than anything. I believe and I know that the chart is 95% accurate, if not higher, if you have the right birth time.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to just return shortly because I'm aware of time. I want to return shortly to our to the topic of medicine and astrology. What can you tell us some signatures in the chat that could maybe be helpful for people to be aware of?
What do you mean, like books that I would suggest?
Oh, like no, when I'm talking about signatures, it's just I don't know if you use that word, but like different placements in the charts.
Oh, okay. So, usually a trauma is with Pluto squaring Venus is usually a sign of some sort of sexual abuse for women. One
Okay.
out of three women who have this, I mean, I don't know if you've seen it a lot, but I see that aspect a lot. And it's either sexual abuse, and they say one out of three women have been sexually abused by somebody, and that fits with my knowledge of astrology with the clients I've seen.
Okay.
Always, if you have Pluto or Saturn squaring Mars, that's more physical trauma. And then of course, I mean, it's mostly the outer planets squaring inner planets.
And what about, I'm not even sure the word for it, but when you have pains all over and you're not sure what it is.
Oh, that's fibromyalgia kind of stuff.
Yeah, sort of like that.
Okay, that would be more of it's first of all, in your chart there could be Neptune opposite your Mars or Neptune squaring your Mars, where you have whenever it's a weird illness that nobody can figure out, then it's Neptune. All right, so then we got to dig into how to rebalance the Neptune in your chart. Like, it's mysterious, all these autoimmune diseases that nobody can figure out.
That's the name of it. Autoimmune disease. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's an epidemic,
Yeah.
an absolute epidemic, especially with women.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
so many women have Hashimoto's disease. I'm
Can
a
you
big, go ahead.
can you in particular help people with with the autoimmune diseases? Eh,
Yeah, only because I have an autoimmune disease, so I can help them with all the things that I've done to help myself. I don't know it. I mean, it's not an astrological thing. It's just I know what you need to do. Like, one of the things, if you have any kind of autoimmune disease, you want to be 100% gluten free, even if you think you have no problem with gluten.
yeah,
So is that big in Denmark, being gluten free?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In when people have certain conditions, right? Yeah.
So gluten, even if you think you have no symptoms and you can eat bread, fine. Try an experiment. Go 6 weeks without eating a speck of gluten. And by the way, gluten is in everything from soy sauce to salad dressings, and it's everywhere. Go 6 weeks without touching it, and then try to eat bread and see what happens to your body. It's usually quite dramatic. So gluten is like putting oil on a fire, and it just blows up the inflammation in the body. So gluten is not great. There are a lot of really good people out there, like Anthony Williams, the medical medium. Do you know about his work?
I have heard about him. Yeah. Yeah.
I think he's really good. Dr. Amy Myers is really good about autoimmune things. There are a lot of really good people out there who can help, and diet is a huge part of it. And also certain supplements that can help. And I'm a big fan of LDN. Do you know what that is?
No.
It stands for low dose naltrexone. And there's a book you can buy that I highly suggest called the LDN book. And it's about a woman who was super, super sick with all these autoimmune diseases and nothing was helping her. And these naturopathic doctors figured out that if people took a homeopathic dose of this drug, it's a very, very minute form of something called low dose naltrexone, it can help reverse autoimmune diseases.
Okay, well, thank you for those recommendations. Um,
You should definitely look into that, the LDN book, and anyone who's listening to this, if you've got something going on with you, especially autoimmune or something that nobody can figure out, read that book, understand what that's about. And it's not dangerous. Like I said, it's homeopathic dose of it.
but so when you were talking about how you work with doctors and all of that, is that then based on your own experience with an autoimmune disease? Or what is it that you do with doctors?
Oh, doctors will send me their patients that they don't know how to help.
And then you'll work with the patients in terms of astrology or what?
I'll do their astrology chart, and then if they give me permission, I will talk to the doctor about what I found in the chart.
Okay. Okay. So that's what then if people come with an autoimmune disease, can you help them in terms of their chart or not?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think you have to have a baseline foundational understanding of the way that you're wired.
Yeah.
And remember, I said it's like music. So having an astrologer, like the way I do it, where I'm basically getting you to like the piece of music you were born with, and then I'm like an orchestra conductor, and I'm like, all right, the flutes are you can't hear them, the drums are too loud. We got to recalibrate how you're living your life here, and then I can help them with my medical knowledge just from things I've experienced if it's something that I have a history with, and I've had a lot of history with injuries. I have Mars square Uranus in my chart. That's not easy. And right now, Uranus is sitting on my Mars.
Right. Yeah. Well,
So I saw this coming years ago and I was nervous about it because I thought, oh my God, I already live with this kind of accident prone thing, Mars square Uranus. I tell anyone who's got that aspect, you do not want to go skydiving or bungee jumping. Like, don't do stupid things with your body because you're a little bit likely to have unexpected, weird things happen to you.
yeah.
And I just try to do more yoga, and I'm very careful. I get new sneakers every 6 months just because I know I'm under a weather pattern right now of, I mean, I've already told you I've broken my foot once, sprained both my ankles 4 times. I mean, I could list the number of things like that astrologer said. I've been through a lot physically.
I have heard that Mars Uranus is accident prone, but then in other news, it's also really inventive, right?
Right, it doesn't have to be bad. Yeah, yeah,
It's not only that, at least. Um,
yeah.
okay, so I want to just end by asking you about your life philosophy, and the thing that you say in your book is astrology is the language of compassion.
Yes, because I look at it as if it is music. So if you're classical music and you're born into a family where everybody's jazz, you're probably going to have a tough childhood because they're not going to get you. But you're perfect just the way you are. Or look at animals. There's a basset hound dog, which has the short, stubby legs. It's a hound, but he moves really, really slowly. And then there's a greyhound that can run really fast. Are you going to get mad at the basset hound because the greyhound is going to beat it in a race? No, you would never do that to a dog. And you would never expect jazz music to be like classical. So I say with astrology, all of a sudden you're in this level place where you say, oh, they're a basset hound. No wonder they're this way. Or they're classical music. I get them. Now I'm not going to expect them to be what I want them to be because we all think everyone should be just like us.
Yes, I mean it's true, right? And people
We
even
do, because why would we not think that? We come from everything from this point of view, but astrology lets you see the whole picture. And then you realize, oh my God, everyone is a totally different color. Everyone's a completely different piece of music or a different flavor or a different dog breed. And, a Chihuahua is a very different animal than a Great Dane, but they're both dogs. So we do not expect the Great Dane to fit in our pocketbook. And why would we even want to do that? But we do this to humans all the time. We're like, but I want you to be a Chihuahua. And the Great Dane can't. So that's what we have to do for ourselves too. Like, let's say you're born like more like a shape of a hippopotamus. Are you going to beat yourself up the entire life because you're not a giraffe? No, you have to work with what you've been given and compassionately learn to like your design. And I mean, certainly there are things in my chart I would love to trade in and have something different, but it's not going to happen. So I want to work with what I've been given and do it the best I possibly can.
Yeah, that's a good philosophy. No, I really like that. It is very, yeah, it opens for compassion when you realize that. And I have many clients in the beginning that they'll say, but isn't it, when I describe some archetype, and they'll be like, but doesn't everyone feel that way? You know, that's how everyone is. And that's, I'm like, yeah, we're not realizing how unique our own perceptions are, right? There's a reason why this stands out in you. And
Yes,
so it's, yeah, I really like that. You're, because astrology, you know, you can say it's the language of the stars, and it's about time, and then you go to, well, it's actually the language of compassion.
it
Yeah.
is the language of compassion because when you see someone's design and how they're wired, you're like, wow. Or even look at cars. I have some people, clients who are Ferraris. They can go from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds. And I'm like, are you gonna get angry at every Toyota or Volkswagen out there? They can't do what you can do. So stop being mad at them. They can't help it. They can't do it. It's not in their design to be like you.
Let's give
And all
people,
of a sudden they go like, oh, no wonder.
yeah. I just want to give people one last car analogy from you, from a book. I think you use it when you want to say, uh, what about twins, right?
Oh yeah.
And you're like, well, they have the same car, but when you give a car to a human, they're gonna drive it differently. Isn't it something like that you say?
Yes. Right. So twins have the exact same chart for the most part. Even if they're a minute or two off, it might be slightly different. And someone could say, well, astrology doesn't work because look, this twin is a drug addict, nutcase, and this one's a famous, actor, whatever. I said, no, their charts are the same. It's just they're different people operating that particular system. So that actor could have become a drug addict. And it's like it's we all have a choice. I could have gone down a very, very bad direction if that astrologer had not helped me, because my chart is very intense and the path that I can be on is about this wide. Most people can be like this with their life. For me, it's like if I ever step off the little path that I'm supposed to be on, like try to do marketing to get clients, oh my God, I get slapped around so badly. Like, stop it. Just trust, do what you do, and everything will flow. I
Wow.
mean, it's one of my big lessons. But I'm human. I still have moments where I'm like, gosh, I wish that I could do blah, 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 but maybe that's not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really that intersection of fate and let's do something about it. Because
Yeah.
I think your chart is pretty fated. I think Piscean charts are pretty fated. I mean, there's some things that, like you said, it's in a way it's narrow because you otherwise, if you go against it, you'll just be directed back in on
Yeah,
track.
I just get pushed right back in like, no, 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 you're not doing that, girl. And I feel like it's like I'm an instrument, and I always give the analogy. This would be Pluto in the first house. Like a clarinet is lying on the table, and I want to play it, but I can't. I have to allow something bigger than me to come through the clarinet, and it's not about me.
Mm.
But yet it looks like it's all about me, but it's not. It's not about me at all. When I'm doing the work with people, I like disappear. I'm just pure, something else coming through and help trying to figure out, let me be of service. As I said, I'm here to stay on that path. And it's challenging because you can't live your life in an ABCD kind of way. It doesn't work for me. I mean, other people it could, but not for me.
I think, this is an astrologer temptation to go into something else, but it's just, it could also be because of your cardinality, your cardinal sign, where you one, it's like you go some steps forward and then some steps back, and then a whole new phase develops. But yeah, I could see that in the cardinality as well, with new beginnings.
Constantly, like if you were to interview me 10 years from now, I bet you anything, I'll have a whole nother twist on whatever, like something I'd be like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like right now I'm working with wild horses in Utah, and I bring groups of people out there to learn about, help people heal and learn about themselves through the wild horses. Now, if you had told me 10 years ago I'd be doing this, I would have said, why would I be doing that? I'm allergic to horses. So yes, my life has its own kind of thing. Now I'm not allergic. So yeah, but I get pushed, like as long as I just stay with the right focus, I will be directed. But not everyone has a chart like that. So I'm not saying that people who are listening to this should do what I'm doing, because I'm not saying that at all. Just saying for me, this is what I have to do.
I hear you. I hear you. And thank you so much for doing it and letting us feel your energy and vibration today. So
Well, thank you I'm just so excited to meet you, and I hope we stay in touch because I think you're awesome. I can tell you've got some really good mojo going on over there.
I'm happy to hear. Because I think we do need to meet again because you have so many topics.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about, we could talk about just horses for an hour. Trust me.
Like just horses. And wow.
And you should join some of my mystery guest classes. I think you'd find them really interesting.
How can people find that? How can we all find that?
Okay, so just email me at leslie@lesliemcguirk.com.
Okay.
And my assistant is Lindsay, and I'll put you guys in touch with her. And we do them every Wednesday. You don't have to do them live, but you could if you wanted to. And they're super fun, and it's a great way to practice astrology with me, especially if you know the basics. And then I also teach beginner classes, Astrology 101 classes that are 8 hours of instruction. And I tell people that after 8 hours, I can get you up and running, reading a chart.
Wow.
I can get you in 8 hours what took me like 20 years to get to.
Exactly.
So I teach that a couple times a year. So I have an Astrology Wisdom Academy, and I'm just now starting. I've got like bite-sized classes that I've done. So for example, I've got a class on depression. I've got a class on addictions. I've got a class on different mental health things, and they're about 45 minutes to an hour, and they're pre-recorded, but they're less expensive when they're not live, so people can go to my library and pick out different topics and learn about astrology. So a lot of the technical things you were asking me, like when you see that in a chart, what is it, that more technical stuff are in those lessons.
Right. It's always fun to jam with, I think. Okay, so that's the Astrology Academy, is it?
Yeah, it's called the Astrology Wisdom Academy, but just go to my website. That particular website, it's getting reconfigured right now because I'm adding all the classes onto it. But yeah, just email us and we'll get you on the list. And we do other special events too. Sometimes if something's really interesting going on in the news, I'll do a special emergency session just to explain the craziness of modern life. So that's really good. The political stuff I've got a lot of classes I've done about what's happening in the United States.
Amazing. Send me the links and I'll post it for people to be able to find you.
That'd be great. Well, I know I'll talk to you again. I think you're awesome. And I hope that I've helped you and who's ever listening out there.
I'm sure you have. Thank you so much, Leslie.
You're welcome. Take care.